I want to tackle this because I was seeing this dude going around today. So first off, I'll pull up his Twitter account just to let you guys know who it is that I'm talking about here. And I've seen him go around maybe a few times prior, maybe, big maybe on if I've seen him go around a few times prior. But this is a content creator called LN Historian. And now this guy has a bunch of YouTube. You can see all of his stuff there. And the main reason I'm pulling this guy up is because, well, he put this out. Yes, this is back in September, back on the 19th, but he put this out the other day. And this isn't the main one that we're going to be tackling here, but what we will be tackling is his other one. But he has this one first. Responding to the Anime Man on the anime tourist versus colonization analogy, is anime inherently political? Yes, it is. No, it's not. But let's at least see what this guy has to say here first.
So let me get this right. You make a political analogy comparing anime tourists and colonization, and when I call you out on said political analogy, you tell me I'm too political and need to go outside.
Yes. Yes. Because, okay, I don't even know what the Anime Man said in this particular interaction here, but 110%, let's be real fair here. When it comes to tourists, you are like colonizers. You go around all over the place trying to change things for your enjoyment and not like sitting there and being like, okay, so why do I like this? That is an actual like colonization bent. And then when it comes to this idea that all anime is political, no, not in the slightest. Is there a political anime here or there? Probably. I could probably name one here or there. I could probably tackle. And even as I sit here and think about it, I can't really think of an inherently political anime. I could think of anime that tackle maybe a political theme, some philosophical themes, things of that nature, but I'm not thinking of an anime off the top of my head that is inherently political. And I'm making that very clear here because just because anime tackles maybe a political position, a philosophical position, something in like morals and things of that nature, that does not mean it's inherently political. That is a leftist terminology that has been applied to things like Doctor Who, things like Star Trek. They always try to make this all about, hey, it's political because they tackle political themes, but instead they don't realize that it's just tackling political themes and it's not political. So already your premise is entirely wrong, and I agree with the Anime Man. You do need to go outside and touch some grass because you are just way too political here.
Alright, bro. To clarify my point in your part of the video, all I was saying is that I find it embarrassing how some anime fans act like victims whenever new people, let's call them normies,
Yes, because every single time a tourist or a normie comes in, they start complaining about maybe fan service. They start complaining about maybe a character's art design here or there. They might be complaining about all sorts of things. We could go into the whole lolly debate, but I don't want to deal with the lolly debate. But they immediately want to change it for their own standards instead of sitting here and going like, okay, so why do anime fans like this? They'll start nitpicking art design or things of that nature instead of actually sitting there and dealing with the actual substance of itself, or maybe realizing what it is that they're looking at isn't meant for them and they need to go somewhere else. Death Note's right over there. Death Note as normie as can be. Go watch Death Note. Deal with your Death Note garbage, okay? Please, just go over there.
Join the community. I'm not saying you're one of the extreme voices. In fact, I thought you were pretty light. My only issue was the comparison. As a major figure in the community, you're almost normalizing this analogy, and in doing so, giving more ammo to these extreme fans.
I think maybe he agrees with that whole thing. Like he's being very fair with it, but there are tourists that come into the whole genre and want to change it. That is a fact. And we don't like that because you guys do it to every other genre, but here you have no problem with it. But I'm kind of done with this particular clip here. And the reason, like, I don't want to focus in on this clip here because he decided to quote tweet it, I believe today, and he doubled down on this whole notion that anime is political, and he has it right here. The fact that the Trash Taste podcast, Giguk, Sea Dog, and the Anime Man couldn't immediately recognize that One Piece is deeply political series is very concerning when it comes to media literacy. I'm holding back my anger right now in my attempt to say a bunch of slurs, but we'll keep digging into here. You don't need Hassan Abi to point it out. Hassan is incredibly wrong with it, and he thinks that freaking Hamas terrorists are the same as Luffy, which is actually wrong. Anyone with basic reading comprehension could see that. Oh God, I want to scream. That said, I doubt they're actually that oblivious. It feels more like they're choosing to deny it for whatever reason. Maybe it explains Joey's response to essentially saying anime is not that deep/political. Well, I do think anime is a whole lot deeper, but let's see. What is this clip that he's trying to play here?
Which is a very political anime, Connor.
It's okay. Well,
It is a very political
what?
anime.
You told me One Piece is very political.
Yes.
What aspect?
Oh my.
What? Okay, you have a very quick shot there. What? Okay, so that doesn't make it political. This doesn't mean it's political. This means people have taken it and tried to make it political. Those are two very different things there. Just because at riots and insurrections you will see people waving around the straw hat flag doesn't mean the show is political. That means people are taking it to make it political. Two very distinctive things there, my dude.
Oh my God, yes, I love this. Okay. This is gonna piss off everybody, but I'm so right about this, even though like I'm okay, first of all, again, maybe a little bit too long as an arc. He's quite literally about like, you know, indigenous populations being removed from their land.
Which arc are you even talking about here? Which arc are you talking about?
And like violently trying to you know, find autonomy and emancipation through, you know, through violent means directly against like an enemy that is much more powerful than them. That is like, you know, that's.
Are we talking about Wano? Are we talking about Skypiea? What arc are we talking about here? Because that is very important in order for me to tackle this entire argument that he's trying to say here. All you have is, well, this arc that's super long. What arc? What arc? Because if I do Skypiea is a very deep arc that actually deals with gods and the ideas of religion and fundamentalism. It is much more than just, well, indigenous peoples and indigenous populations being removed. Yes, that is an aspect of it, but there's also the notion of gods, false gods, the ability to be a god, total destruction, and in beginning some of the inherent mysteries and mysticism of the greater world of One Piece as a whole within the Skypiea arc. So there's a lot to tackle in that arc outside of just the idea of maybe the Shandorans not being allowed to be on their native land in this grand scheme of things. Okay, so there's more than that. If you just tackle it from the idea of the Shandorans not being allowed to be in Shandora, you are missing the vast majority of what that arc is actually meant to represent, and the whole notion around the idea of a false god and enforcing his will on everybody, not just the Shandorans, but also the Skypieans.
So like a land back movement, which is inherently very political, very leftist.
And even when it comes to what he just said there, in fact, what he just said there is even worse when you get into the actual manga and start tackling in the why am I blanking on what the actual terminology is and what the actual like story is, but the cover stories in which they start following Inaru, Enel, whatever you want to call him, and they start following his story and how his people were left the moon. They actually come from space. They actually come from the moon. They left the moon in search of Verth, in search of this land, and they ended up finding it. They ended up being the Skypieans. They ended up being this. There's a whole lot more to this whole entire story that is left out of the anime in a disgusting way, in my opinion. That is actually a fault of Toei Animation right there, in which you just tackle this one little bit and you never get the actual full extent of like Enel's entire story in this grand scheme, him going to the moon, him seeing some of the ramifications of the moon and some of the actions that were going on there, and another aspect that was deep within the actual Skypiea arc that you could see later on when you also realize this is a aspect of One Piece, the idea of resources, the idea of requiring these resources in order to grow. One of the big reasons the Skypieans and the Shandorans loved this, the Shandora and this land and the upper yard was because that is the only way for them to grow trees and to grow resources. So they require it because soil is not natural to the land of Skypiea or any of these cloud lands. So they require that. That's why they worship this area and think of this stuff as being very strong and productive. There's a lot more to this than just people being replaced and everything like that.
I feel like I watched I read a different
Yeah, I know. I was trying to describe this to him. He's like, "What are you talking about?" It's
I was
about
like, man, I saw funny gum man.
Yeah.
killed
No,
that
One
guy.
Piece is about having fun with your friends and being free.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
I mean, kind of it is. One of the big aspects of it is having fun with your friends and being free. That is actually one of the biggest inherent philosophies within One Piece is the quest for ultimate freedom. What is true freedom? What is this idea of true freedom? And as we have gone further and further within the series, primarily within the manga itself, there's a lot of different people that have different aspects and different belief structures around what it means to be truly free. That is one of the keyest aspects of this entire thing. And if you ignore that and think, well, it's just about this, yeah, if you laugh that whole notion off, again, you're missing all of what One Piece is. Jesus Christ, I hate it when these people get into involved. Fucking Hassan is the biggest tourist out there. Yes, one of the key aspects of One Piece is the quest for ultimate freedom, and what does that mean for individuals? And if you laugh that off as, oh, it's just that's so much deeper than that is the whole quest for freedom. No, that is the inherent quest. That is the inherent story. That is the inherent philosophy within One Piece. Jesus Christ.
First of all, Luffy is a terrorist. He is.
So, okay. No, he's not. But yeah, at the same time he is. So that's a little bit more of a deeper level. So no, he's not actually a terrorist. He's a liberator. That's a very different thing than being a terrorist. He is the sun god. He is Nika. He is the liberator. He is Daenerys Targaryen, the breaker of chains, blah, 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 blah. That is what Luffy is. He is this inherent individual to go around and give people joy, make people laugh, have fun, and is a liberator. Much different than an outright terrorist. You could say, yes, he is a terrorist by the perspective of the world itself, because there's a little bit more nuance to this entire perspective when it comes to Luffy and some of the things that go on with that. You have to always remember that you, the viewer, watching Luffy, he is your hero, even though he's a little bit more selfish and things like that. You view most of One Piece through the aspects of the Straw Hats, but you also have to remember that the rest of the world views all pirates as bad guys. They just do, because the idea that there's good pirates like the Straw Hats going around, those are actually minimal compared to the vast majority of all pirates. Most pirates are villains. That's another fact of the matter. So if the rest of the world views all these pirates as villains, Luffy would inherently be a bad guy to the rest of the world. You, the viewer, do not view him as a villain. You view him as the greatest liberator out there, because that is who he is. He's the Joy Boy. Well, not the Joy Boy. He is Nika. He is the return of Nika. He's the return of Joy Boy. That is what Luffy is. He's not a terrorist. He's something completely different.
He is. I mean, he literally is.
Even on this whole notion of terrorism is to be fighting for a political belief structure or a religious structure or things like that. Luffy doesn't do that. Luffy goes around, punches people, walks away. Like, that's what Luffy is. Luffy's whole goal is to just be free. And if you're in his way or screwing with his friends, he's gonna hurt you. That's about it. You could go to Enies Lobby, and when he declared war on the entirety of the world government, yes, you could say, well, that's a terrorist moment. But you have to take into account, why was he doing that? He viewed the world government as being the chains around Robin and being incapable of allowing Robin to be free and to live. So he declared war on the world government so that Robin could be free and to live and to be prosperous and go forward, the liberation aspect of it all. You can't just sit there and say, well, he's a terrorist. No, there's so much deeper to what One Piece is, and dumbasses like Hassan here just have to sit down and think that it's all inherently political.
He's fighting.
I hate that you're kind of right.
Yes,
I fucking hate that you're kind of right.
Yeah, he is a freedom fighter in the most honorable sense of the word. Yeah. He is quite literally fighting against an unjustifiable, corrupt military apparatus that is holding the entire world hostage, the world government,
and here's the other aspect of this. Okay, so yes, Hassan is partially true that the world government is inherently corrupt and awful. He is partially true. I'm not even trying to sit here and just outwardly deny that. But again, and there's actually a really good video on some of these subjects from a guy named Dank Sake, I want to believe it is, in which he's tackling how Dragon is the ultimate hero within all of One Piece, and it would actually be the actual terrorist here, not Luffy, but okay, that's besides the point. But he does this great thing with the whole perspective and what perspective is within One Piece. Yes, at the upper echelons of the world government, it is entirely corrupt. You, the viewer, when you deal with the world government, you see nothing but the bad guys. But you now need to take a look again at the aspect of the world, like I just did with Luffy. The aspect of the world, they, because of like Big News Morgan and people like that, they view Luffy as a bad guy. Okay, that is true. But now let's take a look at this from the other side. When you take the aspect of the world, the people of the world, the citizens of the world, how do they naturally view the Marines and the world government? They actually view them in a favorable light because, just like I said, how there's a vast majority of pirates that are actually villains, there's a large number of actual Marines that are more in line with people like Kobe or Garp or any of the actual good Marines that you know about, individuals like Smoker and people like that. The vast majority of the Marines would actually align more or less with people like Smoker, Tashigi, Garp, Kobe. They would actually probably follow them and agree with what their motives are versus a lot of the other individuals like Sakazuki, Spandam, Lucci, even if Gorosei, for crying out loud. Even when it comes to this notion of, hey, the world government does genocides, which is true, but those are actually incredibly rare in the grand scheme of things. The idea of going around and doing a buster call is rarely ever actually in the show. You only actually ever see a buster call maybe twice in the entire show. And in fact, I don't even know if they finished the second buster call that they've ever seen. Oh, okay, third. Because the only other time that you've ever heard of a buster call prior to what they're doing right now in Egghead is back during Enies Lobby. Again, that was when you were first seeing like the last two buster calls ever, Ohara and Egghead. The vast majority of the time, you don't hear about buster calls. You don't see buster calls. Buster calls are incredibly rare. And like I said, yes, the world government is corrupt. The whole celestial dragons, what's going on there? But this is another quote from Oda. Another fun little quote from Oda. When he starts tackling what is actually going to be, you know, the past, the creation of the world government, he specifically said that you're going to be sitting there questioning who's actually the villains in all this. Who's actually the bad guys here? Is Imu the bad guy? Is the world government really the bad guys? Or are they good? Or were they justified in their actions? You're going to be sitting there questioning what is actually going on. But hey, I mean, tourists like Hassan wouldn't understand that.
Navy, he's literally killing cops. Like,
No. Luffy doesn't off people. That is a fundamental thing that Oda ensures does not happen within the show. You could say, well, I mean, this filler arc he might have done. Nah, filler arc doesn't count. Luffy doesn't kill. The Straw Hats do not kill. That is a fundamental fact and a fundamental rule that Oda has put in there. If you come out here and say that Luffy kill about the cops, no. He does not kill. That is a core aspect of what One Piece is. Jesus Christ, anybody that says this is a lunatic and should be kicked out of the community. For crying out loud, you are not a One Piece fan if you're saying anything like this. You are nothing more than a tourist and you haven't actually delved into the the more foundational elements of what One Piece is.
He's killing sea cops and motherfuckers are like, no, that's not politics. What do you mean? That's just like dumb man having fun.
I mean, the thing is, like, I remember you saying this yesterday when we were having dinner, and I was just like, I think with One Piece, just because of the art style and just the way things are, funny rubber man. Yeah. Of course, you know, you can take it at that level, and it's still very, very interesting stories. But if you break down some of the stuff that happens, half of it is Luffy going up against a corrupt government or corrupt.
Yeah,
like,
about a third of it is that. There's a whole lot more deeper aspects of it. Even I would even say a third of it is that. There's a so much deeper aspect than just Luffy going up against a corrupt government.
Yeah.
Okay, but you had this. But here's the thing, okay? This dude is retarded. Hassan's retarded. Anybody that thinks that One Piece is actually inherently political is retarded. And I'm going to do it with a little statement that I did. Now, here's rock solid, obviously. I'm going to say modern media literacy is people looking for bias, manipulation, and hidden agenda where they aren't, while missing the plain meaning right in front of them. It's treating every joke like a puzzle, every arc like propaganda, and every message like a secret code. And I have a fun little thing for you, for those of you that don't know this about One Piece, and I'll just bring down my response to this. Oda puts religious iconography, religious symbolism, and Christian values all throughout One Piece. Fun fact there. We can go through like a couple of the very easy ones to hit off right now. You can say devil fruits. You can tackle Needhawk's cross sword, his cross dagger. You can tackle easy things like that. Obviously, super easy to tackle there. Other aspects is there are 2 world trees within all of One Piece. Just 2. There's the Eve tree over in Marie Joie, and then the Adam tree over in Elbath. Both of these trees are incredibly important to the overall story, to the overall element. And if you're going to sit there and say, why the hell is there an Adam and Eve tree? Because there's inherently religious aspects to this entire story. There's other religious examples all throughout One Piece. The idea of gods, religion, iconography, all that stuff is throughout One Piece itself. But one of the biggest ones, one of the best ones that I love to use in this little moment, during Wano arc, and major spoilers ahead, major spoilers ahead. So if you're watching this on the replay or you're watching this now, I'm warning you right now, there is major spoilers about to happen in 3, 2, 1. During Wano arc, Luffy dies. Luffy dies during Wano arc. That is a fact. Well, okay, not a fact, but that is what is inherently implied within the battle between him and Kaido. Luffy returns, though. Luffy is resurrected, utilizing the powers of the, well, his now awakened Gum Gum fruit, which was not the Gum Gum fruit, but in reality was the human fruit Nika variant. He was brought back as a god, as a liberator, as a divine being after he is died. He dies and is resurrected. Can't get any more fundamental than that. And Oda loves throwing in Christian iconography, Christian storytelling, all that stuff throughout all of One Piece. So if I take this entire position of, hey, media literacy and like, oh my god, it's inherently political, blah, blah, blah. Okay, if that's the position you want to take, I will take the position that One Piece is inherently Christian, is filled with Christian values. I will take that position. I think that's a stupid position to take, and I think the reality of One Piece is they tackle hard themes, maybe a political theme here or there, but they also tackle hard philosophy and philosophical questions and what is true and moral, and they deal with these very brilliant tactics and these very brilliant storytelling to give you a beautiful, beautiful legend, a beautiful tale, on par with things like Berserk. Yeah, I'll even throw it up there. I'll say that this One Piece is on par with Lord of the Rings. It is one of the greatest stories ever told in all of human existence, and the amount of themes that it has tackled through Oda himself is fantastic. It is incredibly fantastic, and it makes you sit there and think and wonder what's going on. Hell, even when it comes to the corrupt government, the corrupt evil government. The corrupt evil government utilizes weird demonic iconography, weird demonic symbolisms. Outright, they have like pentagrams that they use to travel around everywhere. They use demon energy. In Imu, when he is first shown off to use some of his powers for the first time, he is a devil demonic creature, a very much looked like a devil. Where we are right now in the story in Elbath, again, spoiler warning for those that are watching still, Imu is utilizing a grimoire and his own devil fruit powers to turn other people into demons. So if the bad guys are demons and devils and things of that nature, and Luffy is our liberator, our god figure within the story, wouldn't that even be more evidence of a Christian theme throughout all of One Piece? Therefore, One Piece is inherently Christian and is a Christian nationalist story. All about freedom and liberation. No, it's stupid to say that. Those are themes. That doesn't make the story inherently this or that. Those are themes. But dumb people like Hassan, like this freaking LM guy or LN historian, people like that, they are tourists. They try to tackle and come into your medium, come into the things that you love, you adore, you enjoy, to act just like the colonizers that Anime Man called out. They act just like the locusts that I've called them on multiple occasions. They come into your medium, they come into your area, and they want to change it and bastardize it to fit their agenda and their means. Don't let them do it. Call them out every time you see them do this, because they are awful individuals. The fact that Hasan is this person that thinks that he understands One Piece at all is laughable, because the amount of in-depth studying you have to do to just start cracking some of the codes of One Piece is insane. There's wonderful channels out there that will sit down and do long form videos on what One Piece is truly about, but Hasan will never look at them and never realize just how stupid he sounds when he says this, when even the people that do these long form in-depth breakdowns of One Piece and like the storytelling and the story structures, they look at what Hasan is saying. They might agree with Hasan politically, but they see what he's saying in regards to One Piece and they think he's entirely stupid. I'm not even making that up. They think he's entirely stupid. Hell, even when it comes to the guy I was shouting out, Dak Sake, in his Dragon video, and how Dragon is actually like one of the greatest heroes in all of One Piece and is the only true hero. He sits down and talks about how you cannot equate the Marines to cops. So when you hear Hasan saying, well, he's just going around, being ACAB with the Marines, they're third police. No, there's something much deeper and much more symbolic within those actual Marines themselves, and they actually care about the world government. And if you're sitting there saying like they're the same as cops, you are not even getting what the fundamental story of One Piece truly is. But hey, tourists are gonna tourist, and they're gonna bastardize anything they get their hands on.